So 2022 was a crazy year. I made great money in some businesses. I also had some massive failures as well, some real highs and some real lows. And I'm making this video today to share with you some lessons I learned throughout 2022 that will hopefully help you as well. But most importantly, it's a video that I can look back on in a few years' time and see where I was currently up to, and also, evaluate like if I was making the right choices, what my mindset was like at that point as well, which basically keeps track of my progress. So this video is ultimately for me, but hopefully it helps you as well. So one of the biggest things I learned in this year is that success is just not linear in some of the domains I'm playing in. And it reminds me of this amazing quote by Naval Ravikant. It goes like this: in physical domains, diet, workouts, consistency is king. In intellectual and social domains, wins are rare, sudden and non-linear. 99% of effort is wasted. Once we find our ideal spouse, career, friends, we realize how much time we squandered by not moving on sooner. This is a beautiful quote, and I actually want to add on to it a formula that I've been playing with on my head that I think works pretty well with it. See, sometimes a non-linear opportunity presents itself, and you have to be experienced enough to recognize it, and you have to be good enough to take advantage of it. And if you're experienced enough but not good enough, you'll watch the opportunity pass you by. If you're good enough but you're not experienced enough to recognize the opportunity, then you won't even notice that the opportunity has taken place. But to get to the place where you have enough experience to recognize the opportunity, and then get to the place where you have enough skill to take advantage of the opportunity, you need lots of life lessons and lots of failures as well. Because really the true lessons only really come through failures, or watching other people fail and noticing what they do and what you can do instead. I've got a friend who started a landscaping garden business a few years ago whilst everyone was stuck at home. He noticed the opportunity that a lot of people were watching content a lot more. He also noticed that a lot of people are wanting to take care of their homes as well and wanting to take care of their gardens just because they have more spare time on their hands. He is now running $1 million business per year because he noticed the opportunity, he was experienced enough to notice it, and he had the skill to take advantage of it and to actually take advantage of the audience and the extra eyeballs that were there. A person without those two attributes would never have managed to do it, even though the opportunity was currently present. You could also be that person, but maybe you're just a few failures away from you being that person. So it's important that you actually don't give up. The next lesson, and this is actually inspired by Alex Hormozi. I was watching one of his videos and he was saying, the bigger the insecurity, the bigger the need for success, basically. He says that when he's analyzed really successful people, he's also noticed they've got massive insecurities, and that insecurity almost drives him. And I thought to myself, you know what? I've noticed the same thing as well. It's just never been like front of mind. And it made me really stop and analyze myself, because I've had to come to terms with over the last year that I have massive insecurities about needing to do well. And that is really what drives me forward. And I think it stems from having like no money at all when I was a kid. I remember my mom, she didn't know I was actually watching her, but I remember once she was sat at the kitchen table and she was basically crying because she was so worried that she couldn't afford next week's food. She's a single mom, she's a friggin' hustler. And she was just distraught. And I remember thinking to myself, I do not want to be in that situation when I'm older. Even as quite a young kid, I remember still having that conscious thought. And then I remember as well going out with some kids from school, and they would just ask if I had any other clothes, because I used to just turn up with the same clothes on all the time, because my mum couldn't afford to basically buy me any, new clothes or anything like that. I felt so embarrassed. And I remember I used to sit and think about like good comebacks to actually say to it. And I remember I used to say to them, some sort of random excuse about how like, oh, it's just my favorite top or something like that. But like, I really had no other clothes. I remember having to hide this. And I just remember thinking to myself, I never want to have to deal with that again in my life. I never want to have to deal with like that level of embarrassment, feeling like I'm looked down upon because I don't quite have the resources of other people. And these things really, really shape you. And I remember seeing in Alex Hormozi's video that like he was trying to live up to his father's standards, and like his father had really strict standards and nothing was ever enough, and he didn't believe in Alex at all. Like that's exactly why he needed to push himself as hard as possible.
I had these massive insecurities about my father's approval, right? So that was the thing that was withheld from me, my childhood, adulthood. I mean, and for context, my father called me and he pretty much said all the things that I'd done up to, every decision that I had made was not a good decision after I decided to veer off the path of the job. I wanted to beat my father so badly at his game that it would be, that he could not claim that I had not won. So every aspect of my life has been built to be impenetrable. And so it's like, I don't want to just be in shape. I want to be so jacked that no one says that I am not in shape. I don't want my wife to be just a girl. I want her to be incredibly hot, incredibly cool, and good at business and making money, right? I can't just make money or have a living or just be in the top 1%. Like I want so much money. And the real reason is because I just want everyone to leave me alone and not hurt me, right?
Yeah. And then I think back to my own life and think about the times where, I've been called a workaholic, how I worked my entire way through my 20s. I've just created business after business. And really, it's not to chase money or anything like that. Really, it's just to run away from ever having to feel those feelings again of inadequacy and massive insecurity and feeling embarrassed and just trying to fill that hole. And I think about it in a practical sense. If you can find and identify these insecurities in yourself, and rather than burying them deep down, when people say that you got to bury your insecurities and just not focus on them and things like this, like, sure, there's an element of that, but really you need the pain to drive you, okay? So I think that's some of the worst advice ever. You should be using some of this pain to try and make something of yourself. You don't want to just become okay with your insecurities, until you're a bit further on in life. You need a bit of fire there. If you could take that fire, that drive, and turn it into energy and just let it drive you forward, then you're going to make something of yourself, and you should be absolutely unapologetic about that. The next lesson is manage only from strength. So these next 2 points are something that Tai Lopez has talked about quite a lot. I'm in one of Tai Lopez's masterminds. Some of the concepts he's talked about and some of the theories he's talked about are super, super potent if you listen to what he's saying. So one of the things is that you should manage only from strength. You should only operate on your weaknesses. You should find what you're good at and triple down on it. A great place to start is doing your Myers-Briggs personality test. I am consistently an ENTJ. Out of like 10 times I'll do it, I'm like an ESTJ twice, and then the other 8 times I'm like an ENTJ. But even on the ESTJ, it's like very close to the S is close to the N. So what this means essentially is I have a set of strengths and a set of weaknesses. Let me show you the strengths. I'm efficient. I hate inefficiencies. I always try and be as efficient as possible. I 100% agree with this. Energetic, self-confident, strong-willed, strategic thinker, charismatic and inspiring. Well, that might actually sound like I'm the perfect human being. However, I'm not. Let's have a look at some of my weaknesses. I can be stubborn and dominant. I can be intolerant, impatient, arrogant, poor handling of emotions, cold and ruthless. Absolutely true. So going by my strengths, I should be strategic and looking at efficiencies while managing people and driving towards goals. That is my strength right there. However, weaknesses, if I'm working as a team, I have to remember that other people have feelings as well. And that sometimes, even though I'm not intending it, I can come off as kind of bold, kind of a bit too harsh, but it's just my way of viewing the world. So if you can find your strengths, if you can find your weaknesses as well, start with the Myers-Briggs is a great place to start, and truly understand what you're good at. Just manage your strengths and start actually analyzing yourself and think to yourself, am I actually working in a job role which is helping me and aiding my strengths? Or is it completely the opposite of my strengths, in which case you should probably leave? Am I on the path of managing from my strengths, or am I on the path of just operating from my weaknesses? Do this, it will change your life. The next lesson is to be aware of perverse incentives. What do I mean by perverse incentives? Well, here's an example. We see a lot of gurus out there, whether they make money online gurus, whether they've written a business book, whether they're some sort of, crazy cool entrepreneur who's got millions and millions and millions. And in the book or in their content, they often lay out step by step of how I got to etc. place. Now, the perverse incentive would be they're not actually really disclosing how they managed to get to where they are. They're telling you some steps which are involved in the process. However, they're not quite going into detail on the steps which made them successful. You know why? Because they're just not incentivized to create more competition with themselves, to teach people exactly step by step of what they did to get to where they are. So you have to be mindful of this when you're watching their content, when you're understanding what they're saying, when you're taking in their step-by-step instructions. And what you have to do is you have to watch multiple timelines of multiple people and look into their history and see how they built their company and do this, and eventually you'll piece together the puzzle yourself, because no one's actually going to tell you exactly what they're doing with their money. Warren Buffett isn't exactly disclosing how he's making his investments, but he'll write a book and talk about how he makes his investments, but he won't actually tell you what he's doing right now. He will give you a step to success and a path to success for something else. So you just got to be aware of this. You've got to be aware of perverse incentives when you're consuming information. And this was huge for me over the last year as well, because there's a time and a place where you have to learn to get information, and then it becomes very hard to get information when you don't know if the information is actually correct, and you could end up dedicating a lot of time to it. To get around this, you have to make alliances and friends with people who know exactly what they're talking about, and who are maybe a few years down the line, and you're a bit more than just a random internet person they're giving coaching to, or they're showing you an online course or something like that. You actually have to make friends with these people, so they're a bit more incentivized to tell you the real truth about what's going on. The next lesson, the most valuable resource to you, me, to everyone you know, is time. There is nothing more valuable than time, because you can't get it back once it's gone. You can't buy it back once it's gone. No amount of money will do that. And any mistake you make will always steal that time away from you. Over this year, I've reflected at some of the things I've done, how I've spent my most valuable resource. And honestly, sometimes I'd look at it and be like, it's like you don't even care. In 2022, I lost somebody who was close to me. They were late 30s, they had plenty of their life ahead of them, and their life was snatched away like that. We don't know when the journey's going to end, and I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I want to make sure that in 2023, I'm living with intent. I don't want to be wasting time on things which aren't important. I want to be moving as quickly as possible. This is not only how great businesses are created, but it's also how you live a fulfilling life as well. I don't want to be dealing with things which just aren't important to me anymore. I'm going to deal with this in a few key ways. I'm going to eliminate everything that isn't worthwhile. I'm going to automate everything that can be automated, and anything that can't be automated, I'm going to outsource it, so I can continue to build things which are very important to me. But that includes friendships, connections, relationships, happiness as well. It's very tough to lose somebody, but I'm also reaching the age now where I'm seeing the generation above me, they're having their friends die. And the older I get, I'm thinking to myself, really hitting me that life is very precious and it's short as well. I'm coming up to my mid-30s and I don't feel any different really than I did when I was 18. I think a little bit differently, I have a different mindset on me, but like deep down, I don't feel any different. And I feel like I've wasted so many opportunities, and that honestly burns me so deep. I want to do more. I want to create goals for myself and hit those goals. I want to push myself beyond belief, so that when it is my time as well, I don't sit around thinking, you know what, I had reconnect with my family on my goal list for the last 5 years and I haven't done it. I want to build this and I haven't done it. all these regrets. Everyone's going to have regrets in life. It's inevitable. It's actually healthy to have regrets because it drives you further forward. However, we want to minimize them where possible. There's an amazing article by a nurse called Bronnie Ware who basically looked after patients who were dying, and she noted down the 5 biggest regrets that people have at the end of their life. Here they are. Number 1, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Number 3, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Number 5, I wish that I had let myself be happier. That's on bronnieware.com. But what do you notice about all those things there? They're things which people wished they would have done. They just didn't have the courage to almost do it, right? I don't ever want to get old and truly look over my life and just think to myself, oh, you could have done so much more. There's a saying that the worst type of hell is where you die and meet the person that you could have been. And I certainly don't want that to happen to me. So next year, I'm going to live life with more intent. I'm going to go after what I want. I definitely feel like I've got better at this as time went on, but honestly, I think I could still improve on this probably 2 or 3 times at least. So I hope this video was helpful to you guys out there. And hopefully you can take some of the lessons which I've learned throughout 2022 and use them to manage your own time more effectively and push yourself a little bit further as well. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you get everything you wish for in 2023 through hard work and determination. May you have the grit to do it. Take care. See you in the next one.